Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CES University 2020 Winter Weather Outlook. I'm Larry Pignataro, Energy Advisor at CES. And again, with me today is my friend and fellow Plymouth State alumni, Charlie Lopresti. Well, WGME 13 Charlie Lopresti.
Yeah, sounds fancy now. Thanks for having me again, Larry. This is it's going to be a lot of fun, and we always look forward to seasonal forecasts. So.
That's it. Yeah. So looking forward to your winter forecast. But before we do that, I just needed to give Charlie some kudos here because we met in April, or we met in May, and if you joined us, you saw this slide on the left. This was Charlie's forecast at the time, and on the right of this is the actual temperatures and what actually happened during the summer. So, Charlie, in May, you said you took a look back of the coldest Aprils and Mays, which we had this past year in 2020, and you looked back for 40 years, and you took April and May cold weather that looked similar to what we had, and then extrapolated that out and said, what did the following summer look like? And 82% of those summers turned out to be hot and dry. And that's exactly what happened. Hot and dry and lots of hurricanes. So you said that, so I got to give you props. Great forecast. Good work.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it was usually in the springtime, when it's warm, it's cold and it's wet in the spring. It's almost a slam dunk. It's going to be warm in the summer around here. And it's interesting to see how those correlate. So all you got to do is look back at some of those years that were similar, plug them into a database, and that's what spits out. So we lucked out with that one. And we also looked at sea surface temperatures as well. So,
right. So it wasn't you, it was the database. It was the database. It was the database. Yeah. So yeah, hot summer, and as large energy users are fully aware of, when the summer is hot, we, for some reason that's not working, we get very high ISO system peaks, and this is important because folks who are managing their capacity tag can take advantage of some savings. And as many of you know, your capacity tag is set for the one peak hour of the year where the system is most strained. And what you're looking at here is, this was the forecast from ISO New England the week of July 23rd. So ISO does a 7-day forecast looking out to estimate system demand. And this is what it looked like in that time frame. And ultimately, Monday, July 27th ended up being the highest system peak. And once ISO verifies that and validates that, which we think that's what the day is going to be, it's going to be close to about 25,000 megawatt hours, on that peak day. And Charlie, you could see the temperatures and things were very hot that week, and maybe some insight there.
Yeah, it's funny because as soon as you brought up July 27th, I brought up some of my notes right here. It's one of the analog years that we were looking at back in the spring was 2011, and we broke all sorts of records from 2011 this summer. And I have my notes here that we broke the all-time warmest nighttime low on July 27th, and the old record was July 22nd, 2011. So we broke 76 was the previous record, and 78. This is Portland Jetport. So 78 is now the warmest all-time low temperature for the city of Portland, and that was July 27th.
Wow. Yeah. So we had peak day that day. If you were managing your tag on that day, good job. CES does provide demand response help, and we provide a self-help notification to our customers. And we ended up providing about 15 notifications that spread out over 10 days over the summer. So hopefully you were able to reduce your load on that time and see some savings in your future electricity bills. So now that we have the summer kind of cleared up, we want to dive into the winter. And really what I wanted to just, prior to getting Charlie's forecast here, but wanted to just point out some of the things that can impact energy, and specifically natural gas when it gets cold. What you're looking at here are some winter spikes on gas, and they directly align with winter weather and cold snaps. So winter 14, 15, pretty cold, but really we had that 2-week or 1 week spike in 17, 18 around New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, it was really, really cold. So you can see gas spiked up to $78 per MMBTU. And really, this is impactful when we see long stretches of cold, 1, 2, 3 weeks of significant cold. You know, luckily the last couple of years we were able to utilize some LNG injections into the system, so to kind of keep those prices down. But if we do see some extended cold, you know, there could be some impact on natural gas pricing, which also impacts electricity pricing, because the majority of the generation in New England is being driven by natural gas. So very, you need to be aware of what's happening with the weather to understand your gas and electricity pricing. One other piece wanted to note, you know, this also, you know, cold weather can also impact your heating fuels, your liquid fuels. Many of your homes and businesses are heated by propane and oil. It's not really a supply issue in New England from a weather standpoint. It's more of a logistics issue, physically getting the supply to you, whether it's on a truck or on a rail car or wherever it might be. You know, we see some logistical challenges in New England, and that's really where it gets impacted when we see significant snow and trucks stop delivering. So, Charlie, what do we got for this winter?
Well, let's see. I think first off, I think the most important thing is, you know, you were talking about just going back to 2014, 2015 for a minute. I'd be shocked if we see another February like that. So I guess that's good news. But you talked about 2018, that New Year's Day, and even the few days leading up to New Year's Day were in 2018. And that is actually an analog year this year. And one of the things I have in the forecast is for a big spike in cold temperatures in early January this year. And in fact, that is something that is a very real possibility. We're seeing, you know, if you go back in the records, even back in 2009, it was January 16th, we had the coldest temperature in the state of Maine, 50 degrees below zero. That's also an analog year that's very similar to what we have setting up this season. So I think it's appropriate to probably start talking about the winter forecast and just look out into the Pacific. If you can forecast the Pacific Ocean water temperature, there's a good chance you can forecast the weather patterns going into the winter, or at least have a general idea. Last year, we had sort of a neutral ENSO, which is El Nino Southern Oscillation. This year, we have probably a weak La Nina, which is an abnormal cooling of what is now the Eastern Pacific Ocean there. And that can usually manipulate the jet stream in a way that is puts a ridge out west and can dig a trough in the jet stream over the northern tier of the country and into the Great Lakes. So onto the next slide here, I think as far as another interesting part is north of Hawaii, the water temperatures are a little bit warmer than normal there. So what I did was I took, going back to 1980, I took the last 40 years basically and looked at similar years to what we have as far as ocean water temperatures, La Nina, ENSO, looked at the North Pacific as well, and tried to highlight some of those. And these are the ones I came up with. Notice that 2017, 2018, the one we talked about, New Year's Day, 2018, that is a very real possibility, you know, a big cold snap in early January. Just going down this list really quickly, there's a few things that come to the top of my mind. 2011, 2012. We had a big snowstorm in October. Remember that one just before Halloween?
I do,
and then we,
yeah,
and we didn't go winter at all. Remember that, Larry, after that? So it snowed in October, and then the rest of the winter was kind of mild, and we didn't get any snow. And it's kind of like, you know, when it does something it's not supposed to in the transition seasons, then a lot of times the actual season, winter or summer, can be changed, or it's quite a bit different than what it's supposed to. 2011, 2012 was a very good example of that. Now, I'm hopeful that we're not heading for a winter like that, simply because that's not in my forecast. I guess I'm a little selfish because I like snow as well. But yeah, so that's on the table as one of the analog winters, La Nina with a little bit of warming to the north. 2010, 2011. What do you get there? Oh, can you go back to that for 1 second, Larry? Oh, 2010, 2011. Thank you very much. I'm trying to think. 2011, 2008. Oh, yes, 2009. That's the other point I wanted to bring up. 2009 was another big cold snap in January. 05, 06. Okay, 2000, 2001. We'll go through these really quick. 1995, 96. my senior year in high school, we got a ton of snow that year. And I remember that because seniors didn't have to go to school after May. And we got a ton of snow days that year. And 84, 85 shows up as weak La Nina, same as 83, 84. And I do remember that those years were cool here in the Northeast. I learned to ice skate on some of the ponds. So yeah, those are the analog years we're basing a lot of our forecasts off of here. All right, let's fast forward. Thanks for jumping to the next slide, Larry.
Charlie, you're showing your age here by your senior year in high school. You sure you want to do that?
Not far. No, don't go there yet. Yeah, that was a big snow year. 95.
I think you remember that too. Even I was living in Connecticut. I think mine was my junior year in high school, and yes, there was a lot of snow that year, even in Connecticut, even in southern Connecticut.
It snowed like every other day, big storms too. And I remember bumper riding in the snow a lot with some of my friends. All right, that's a different story here. All right, so what are we looking at here? All right, when you look at those analog winters that we looked at, plug them into that database, this is what comes up as far as temperatures go. Cooler than normal. The slam dunk in this forecast for La Nina winters is colder than normal in the northern plains, and wet in that region as well, perhaps down into the Great Lakes, and then warm and dry over the southern tier of the country, with the southeast ridge playing a role, high pressure down the southeastern part of the United States, keeping things kind of warm and dry there as well, and up in the Four Corners region, sort of warm and dry. So that's the slam dunk part of the forecast as far as the La Ninas. Now, it can be more variable here in New England, but typically these type of winters are warmer than normal. All right, and you see how the temperature setup breaks down by month, and we're looking specifically at January through February here. One of the things that comes out in the data is December gets off to a pretty good start in most of those years as far as cold and snow. So we have a pretty good shot of getting normal to above normal snowfall, and either normal or maybe even cooler than normal temperatures in December. January is more variable, and again, big temperature swings should be expected in this sort of winter I think we're going to get a really good cold shot, big cool down with temperatures 10 to 30 degrees below zero in northern New England, kind of like we did in 2018 or 2009. So that's on the table there in January. But one of the things that comes out in the data is February, warmest relative to normal. So that is typically, some of the most extreme or most impactful part of the winter. And right now, based on our forecast, it's looking like February might end up being the warmest relative to normal, which typically means, in my mind, if it's warm in February, it's got to come back in March. So it could be one of those winters that is slow to move out.
Yeah, we've seen that before where Feb warms up and then we get snow all of March.
Yeah, and I think that's a very real possibility because, looking back at the data too, as far as March goes, in these years, 70% were normal or above normal snowfall in the month of March. So that's something I always look at in February. It's like if it's too warm in February, you know what's going to happen in March. It's coming.
Yeah. The ski mountains will like that. Ski mountains will like the extended winter.
They will, and the quick start to winter too in December, if that's right. We have in any normal year, we'll talk about the Christmas stuff, but any normal year in Portland, we have a little over 50% chance of having snow on the ground. This year, I think we have an 80% chance of having snow on the ground Christmas morning. Yep. All right, and as far as precipitation goes, looking at those years that we outlined, the slam dunk part of it is again the dry. The farther south you go, what's happening here? It's just always warm and dry, or typically warm and dry down in the southeastern part of the U.S., southern part of the U.S., and a little bit wetter than normal as you go up into the Great Lakes. Notice there's not a huge correlation there, and wetter than normal in the Pacific Northwest as well. Usually here in Maine, New Hampshire, even southern New England, yeah, you could get some wetter than normal setups in La Nina, and that's what I'm going for this year.
Okay.
So how does that translate to snow? Well, that's the big question. A lot of folks want to know. Well, going back in the records, I looked at, I looked at the last 20 years of precipitation, and 12 of those were above normal in precip, in Portland anyway. And of those 12 years above normal in precip, 11 of those had above normal snowfall. So if you look at a La Nina year and a weak La Nina year, like we're setting up here, 91.66% of those were above normal in snowfall. Now, if you look at just precip in general, and those La Nina years that we outlined just in the first few slides there, 100% of those, every single one of them, was either normal or above normal in precipitation. So there's a clear correlation between La Ninas and above normal precip for Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, northern New England. So how does that translate to snow? This is put together by NOAA, and we're looking at all the La Nina years going back to the 50s. And I don't think that, I prefer not to look at those La Nina years in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, just because the atmosphere is different. The ocean water temperatures are different there. But you can get a clear idea that, the Northwest, even to the Northern Rockies, Northern Plains, and into Northern New England, yeah, you can get some big snow years in those La Nina years. And this year, I'm not convinced it's going to be a major snow year or anything like that, but I feel comfortable saying, yeah, we're going to get normal to above normal snowfall this year.
Skiers rejoice.
I think so, yeah. And, my forecast is for warmer than normal temperatures, but it's one of those setups where, as long as it's an active storm track, you can get some snow in the mountains. I will say, if you look at some of the forecast modeling, it is the exact opposite of what we just discussed right there. There's some forecast modeling saying, okay, departure from normal as far as snowfall is going to be in the negatives this year. But on paper, if you just look at some of the teleconnections, not just, we talked about El Nino, but, forecast Arctic oscillations, which is, big dips in the jet stream, potentially weakening of the polar vortex. That's something that always comes up in winter. Just a weakening of the polar vortex can sometimes displace the polar vortex down into more away from the poles and down into Canada and into the US. And that's a possibility as well. And that if that happens, it probably won't come around until January, but that's something we'll be looking for. So there's all sorts of things that on paper look like that we're going to have an above normal snowfall year, but forecast modeling looks a little scary at this point. Although modeling did terrible last year, so I'm not too worried about it.
Well, here's that cool vortex, right? Is this the dip you're talking about?
Yeah, well, this is generally the overall jet stream configuration based on La Nina winters. So you see, you get a big ridge out in the Pacific right there. You have a big high pressure system that kind of sets up usually there. And you have a more active northern jet, which dips a trough into the northern part of the US and up through the Great Lakes usually. And that usually centers the coldest temperatures relative to normal, anywhere from portions of Alaska to British Columbia, all the way down through the Northern Plains and the Great Lakes. It also keeps a pretty active storm track in that region right along the jet that we just talked about right there. And in my experience, I've noticed a lot of storms that, you're not going to get those major nor'easters that kind of tap into Gulf moisture that form down in like Alabama and Mississippi, and then you see it riding up the eastern seaboard. You get a lot of those late developments where you get those little systems that come across the Great Lakes, and then you get that secondary low to form maybe just south of Cape Cod over Long Island, and those can be your bigger nor'easters that we get here in winter and those sort of La Nina setups. So they're difficult to forecast just because they're late bloomers in this sort of weather pattern. But we can certainly get some snowfall in this pattern. One thing I'm a little concerned about is when you get a jet stream in that configuration where you get a trough, you always want that trough to be a little bit farther east sometimes for a big snow event, big winter storms in New England. If that trough sets up a little bit farther west, that puts us usually on the warmer side of things, with storms tracking up in the Great Lakes. Which, wouldn't be terrible. A lot of folks in New England love that. But if, you talk about the ski resorts, the plow drivers, a lot of folks rely on snowfall. So, I'd love to get them some snow this winter. So, yeah, the bottom line is I think we have an active track here. And, the easy part of the forecast, I think, is the cooler than normal in the areas outlined, Pacific Northwest. I made a joke with our weekend meteorologist, and I don't know if it's a joke, but I said, hey, it'd be great if we can get on a plane and go up to Whistler and ski at British Columbia this year. I think those areas are going to get it. It's not like the year they had the Olympics up there. They're trying to truck in snow. This year, get it up there. Yeah, remember that? So, yeah, so typically in these sort of La Nina winters, that's this is a map that I put together over in the studio at CBS 13. Typically, you know, we're going to get warmer than normal. That's what I think. There's a high probability that we're going to have a warmer than normal winter in all of New England, with the temperatures coolest relative to normal just farther west, anywhere from the Great Lakes, Northern Plains, Pacific Northwest. And, you know, that's going to be the storm track right there. You know, nice winter to go to Florida, perhaps, dry and warm, and same down in Arizona. So it's this, you know, we talked about this in some of those in the database right there. We talked about, as far as, you know, what do these La Nina winters do as far as precipitation. A lot of times you get those bullseyes for above normal precip, anywhere from the Northern Plains back through portions of the Great Lakes. Those are kind of the bullseyes usually. And the easy part of these La Ninas, yeah, it's dry down, you know, down into Arizona, into Texas, and usually into Florida, and even the southeastern part of the United States up to the Chesapeake Bay. That southeast ridge that we talked about a little bit earlier, a lot of times you get a high pressure system that can do a few things. It can keep temperatures warmer than normal, but it keep a lot of dry conditions and keep storms away anywhere from the southeastern part of the U.S., maybe as far as, you know, Long Island, even southern New England in these sort of setups. So that's something we'll be watching as far how, you know, how strong that southeast ridge stays all winter. Okay. All right, so this is what a lot of the skiers and snowboarders want to see here. But yeah, I have no problem saying normal to above normal snowfall in northern New England. I think it's one of those winters where southern New England doesn't get the snow, or maybe I might even scoot some of those contours a little bit farther north. But I think Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont gets normal to above normal snowfall. The most snow relative to normal will probably be in the Pacific Northwest, up into Montana, Wyoming, even into portions of Quebec as well. Those areas can get some big winters in these sort of setups. And I think they don't get a lot of snowfall down through, you know, the Carolinas and Georgia, and even up through Chesapeake Bay region, DC. But there's definitely a correlation with these winters and that southeast ridge that we talked about that can keep those areas in below normal snowfall in these sort of winters. So I think there'll be a sharp cut, and, you know, we'll have to see if we can get that snow in the winter, but there's a 91.66% chance that as long as we get above normal precip, we're going to get above normal snowfall, at least in Maine. That's a pretty good percentage. I think most of the skiers will take that. Yeah, I think so. So I hope we get it. We'll see. So everybody wants to know, because you said this the last time we checked in, are we going to have snow on Christmas? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of fun. A lot of folks like to know that. My kids like to know that. Yeah, my wife know that. And yeah, so here's the actual historical probability of, you know, are you going to have snow on Christmas? Notice most of northern New England is above that 50% chance there. And there's some spots that get into the 75 to 90% chance. Southern New England is more of the, you know, 25 to 40% chance of, and this is having 1 inch of snow on the ground Christmas morning. And let's just look at the probability in, do you have the next graphic, which shows Portland, I think? Oh, yeah. Yeah, there we go. This is a graphic put together a few years ago. So what we're looking at are just climate normals here. And these are 30-year normals, 1981 to 2010. And every station, every airport is going to have a renew on 30-year normals every 10 years. So this year in 2020, we're going to get a whole new set of normals starting in 2021, I should say. So it's going to be 1991 to 2001. Yeah. Oh yeah. So don't be surprised if in 2021, all of a sudden you're from Manchester, for instance, or Concord, New Hampshire, or Boston. You're like, wait a minute, normal snowfall is, you know, whatever, and then it goes up. In fact, it's going to go up. The last 10 years, last decade is going to skew those numbers for as far as snowfall goes. But anyway, we got off on a tangent. So in the greater Portland area, we have only a 53% chance. You'd think Maine, right? 53% chance of 1 inch of snow on the ground Christmas morning. We have a 37% chance of having 3 inches of snow on the ground Christmas morning, and 20% chance of having 6 inches of snow or more. This year, I think that percentage based on, those years that we looked at, we have an 80% chance. And the thing with Portland is, we're right in the water. So the ocean water temperature, especially in December, is pretty warm still. So a lot of those early storms can result in rain or sleet or freezing rain or that kind of thing. But this year, I'm going with a white Christmas, Larry. People are going to be happy. Snow on the ground in the morning. Maybe it'd be nice falling that day, but we hope it's not a big storm. So Charlie has to go to work. We'll see how that goes.
Most people will be home. So if it snows that day, great.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good, we had that snowstorm a few years ago on Christmas, and I think everyone enjoyed that because, no one had to go anywhere. This is Concord, New Hampshire. Concord actually has a slightly greater chance for seeing snow on the ground Christmas morning, and you can see a 64% chance there, going back in the records, 1981, 2010, 30-year normals. So and we're above normal. This year, I think we have probably a greater than 80% chance of having snow on the ground Christmas morning in the Concord area. So, we always try to have fun with that as well.
So it's lining up to be potential above average for snow, and maybe on a temperature standpoint, just potentially warmer, which is counterintuitive to what you would think. Lots of snow, maybe warmer.
Yeah, for the winter in general. Yeah, let's run down the bullet points for you. Do you have we don't have time to run those down real quick?
Yeah.
All right. So winter, we're talking December to January, just kind of a recap. Warmer than normal in New England. We have above normal precipitation. We have normal or slightly above normal snowfall, northern New England. Snow on the ground Christmas morning. I think we have an 80% chance of that. January or late December cold snap with temperatures 10 to 30 degrees below zero. I'm going with it. We're going to get it, but it's going to come and go. It's not going to be like January or February. I should say February 2014, 2015. We're not looking at anything like that where the cold came and went. The cold came and stayed. This winter, I think the cold comes and it moves out. It's not going to be one of those that sticks around. In fact, I think we have a pretty good shot at a January thaw. We have a 70% chance of a January thaw this year, and February is going to be the warmest relative to normal. And I think it's a winter that is slow to move out. March is going to show above normal snowfall and cool temps. We have a 70% chance for that. Quick start to winter, 90% chance of normal to above normal snowfall in December. It's interesting looking at some of the mountain data as well. I like to look at some of the ski resorts and what's happening at the Mount Washington Observatory. So let's see, Mount Washington, you're looking at their Decembers, they were 70% above normal in snowfall. Just in December is more variable for these La Nina winters. But December, there's definitely a correlation there. The other thing that's interesting about the ski resorts, I looked at Sugarloaf as well, looked at 40 years worth of data for snowfall. And of the last 20 years, this is interesting, the top 5 snowiest years of the last 20 years, 4 of them have been in La Nina winters. So that should be okay, here we are, we're in a La Nina winter, and there's a decent chance that the mountains will get above normal snowfall. Let's see, March, dry. Oh, this is an interesting one as well. Larry, we just got finished with a very dry September. I mean, we've had drought conditions around here, and we talked about this, I remember, in the last La Nina, 2017, 2018. We were coming out of a drought that season as well. But there's definitely a correlation between dry falls, and in this case, I'm looking at specifically isolating the month of September, a very dry September, looking at the last 20 years, the top 10 driest, 90% of those following winters were warmer than normal. So there's a correlation between dry Septembers and warm winters to follow. And that's in the forecast anyway, so that just kind of verifies, hey, it's probably going to be a warm winter. Forecast modeling is pretty warm for us. The big question is, do we get the precip and the snow? What's the storm track look like? And yeah, that's pretty much it at this point. But we'll have to see how this one works out. The other interesting thing, real quickly, is the La Nina that we're going into this winter is probably going to shift back to neutral as we go into the the late winter and more so into the spring. And we might end up getting into La Nina conditions, which would be warmer than normal water temperatures in the equatorial Pacific by next summer. And that has implications on the hurricane season next year, which would be a much more subdued hurricane season if that actually takes place. But there is a trend where that we're getting out of the La Nina. These big hurricane seasons are they're sometimes typical in La Nina years, and going into neutral or weak El Nino next summer, and that would give a more subdued tropical Atlantic Ocean.
This is the precursor. Are you setting yourself up for another another webinar in early spring next year?
Hey, I know in your line of work, you guys live and die by this stuff, and you know I enjoy forecasting. I mean, we've been friends now for what 15, 5 years or something.
I think we have known you for over 20 years now. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been since the mid-90s, and we've always been talking about the weather, right? And this is something I enjoy doing, and you know, I enjoy doing winter forecast, which is basically winter forecasting is it's educated guessing. There's not, you know, I don't do anything that's crazy outside of running statistics most of the time. You know, I look at what's happened, what will happen, and a lot of times you can kind of see that. If you go back in the past, there's a very good chance it's going to happen in the future. But you know, weather forecasting can be variable, and it's kind of fun sometimes. But I'm just happy I'm not putting money down on like on a crop or anything like that, on commodities on these sort of winter forecasts, because then I can see it getting a little bit stressful.
Yeah, many of our customers are doing the same, and we're helping them with that. You know, looking back, understanding energy use profiles, and helping them project going forward. So this is obviously helpful for them and helpful for us. You know, a lot of our, like you said, a lot of our work can be weather dependent, and we're in tune to it in the summers, and then when we get these peak cold events. So thank you for your forecast, and thank you for watching. And if you would like to learn anything else or would like to learn more about any energy topic, you can visit our website. We have multiple videos and webinars there that will give you any insights to renewables or demand response or these fun webinars about weather. So Charlie, thank you.
Thanks for having me, and look forward to maybe connecting in the spring again.
Yeah,
Hope the forecast well for you folks.
I like the look back, and I'm going to hold you to it.
Oh, all right. We'll see how it goes down. I like it. Just don't look at last winter's forecast.
We don't want that. Yeah. Thank you, Charlie.
All right. Thanks for having me.